Welcome everyone to NJTESOL-NJBE's Professional Development Series for this year, which will be dealing with teaching foundational reading skills to multilingual learners. This is our first presentation. And today we have Kathryn Tepedino, who is our Professional Development Chair and the Executive Board Secretary of NJTESOL-NJBE, doing our presentation. She has taught ESL and reading intervention for multilingual learners in grades K through 12. She has teaching certifications in ESL, French, special education, and as a reading specialist. She also has an Orton Gillingham certification and is training to be an Orton Gillingham teacher trainer through Fairleigh Dickinson University. Next slide. We're going to just do a quick tour of Zoom today. We are asking that everyone remains muted and keeps their camera off because we are anticipating a large number of attendees today. So the directions for using Zoom are there. You can see at the bottom, you have a place to mute yourself and also to view the chat. Next slide. We were asking you to rename yourself. So if you see where it says participants, if you click on there, you will see a place where you can rename yourself. We would like you to include your first name and the grade that you teach, if you teach ESL or bilingual, or if you're a mainstream teacher. Again, we're going to keep ourselves on mute. And also, we're going to ask you to put any questions in the chat. If we have time at the end of the presentation, we will answer them. If we run out of time, what we will do is we will email written responses to the questions in the chat after the session is over. I will also attach that document to the recording of this session, which will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, likely by tomorrow. Next slide. Remember to subscribe to our NJTESOL-NJBE YouTube channel. You will find videos there on a variety of topics from a variety of presenters. There's a lot of information there. We also have a Parent Expo YouTube channel, which has resources for parents, and you can find that on our website under the parent resource page. Next. And what we would like you to do now is to complete this Google form. I'm going to put the link for that in the chat as well. This form will enable us to email you the information from today, the link for the video, and we'll also enter you in our raffle. We are going to be raffling off 2 books at the end of today's session. So if you would like to participate, please put your name, and I'm asking you to say, yes, you want to participate in the raffle. I will change that momentarily after I get started. Thank you for letting me know, Selma, that you need permission to open the doc. If you want to participate in the raffle, what will happen is I will ask for your home address because we will send the books directly to you. I will order them from Amazon and put your address as the address to receive the book. And the next slide. All right, and in an effort to increase accessibility to our professional development, today's PLC session will be recorded and shared with our membership. Again, turn your camera off for the duration of the session. And here's the Slido.
All right, so I
Do you
just
want?
again wanted to see how familiar we all were. I see that a lot of us have a good amount of background knowledge, so that is great. And we will begin. So this year we will be focusing on teaching foundational reading skills to multilingual learners. Tonight's session is meant to really just build and deepen our background knowledge on that topic as we dive into our PLC series for the year. So I just want to thank NJTESOL-NJBE for allowing me to lead the professional development. I have been really working on finding a way to teach multilingual learners for my whole career. So I am just so grateful that we are digging into this for the next 2 years. So before we start, some acronyms I just want to go over that we're going to be using. So MLs are multilingual learners, SOR, science of reading, PLs, proficiency levels, ORF, oral reading fluency. The IDA is the International Dyslexia Association. IMSLEC is the International Multisensory Structured Language Education Council. NSEL is the National Committee for Effective Literacy. TRL, Reading League. WIDA represents the full consortium of states, territories, and agencies, as well as our ever-expanding community of educators of our multilingual learners. L1 is a child's native language, and L2 is the second language. So we're going to play a quick game, myth or fact. You can answer in your head. You can answer in the chat with myth or fact, M or F. And then these questions will be answered for you in tonight's presentation, but just to get a nice kind of assessment for yourself on each of these questions, if you know the answer or not, and how confident you feel in that answer. So myth or fact. SOR, science of reading, is only about phonics instruction. Okay, awesome. I see a lot of false, a lot of myths. MLs can have dyslexia, myth or fact. Science of reading is bad for multilingual learners. Awesome. I'm seeing lots of myths. Literacy screening of multilingual learners should not be administered in English. MLs learn to read differently than monolingual speakers. All right, we have some disagreement on that one, so this is good. English is too irregular to learn the rules for reading. And dyslexia is a common reading disability. Okay, so we're going to come back to them at the end, but just wanted to jumpstart our thinking about tonight's topic. So our objectives for tonight's presentation is going to aim to build background knowledge on the science of reading, learn about the science of reading in our field, how researchers in the reading research field and the multilingual learner language acquisition field came to agreement that the science of reading does in fact apply to our ML students as well as monolingual students and their literacy development. We're gonna very briefly look at some of the new New Jersey ELA foundational reading standards, the WIDA standards for reading, and some proficiency level descriptors. And then we're going to look at some of the new legislation that was passed in August in New Jersey and what it means for our MLs. So a little bit about me. I, like I said, have been pursuing how do I teach my students, my multilingual learners, to read in a way that is culturally responsive and evidence-based. And so I went for my second ESL certification in 2019. I went for my reading specialist certification in 2014. I went for my special ed certification in 2020. And I kept learning a lot about reading, but not like the how. Like, how do I do this? Like, what does this look like on a day-to-day basis? I had kids sitting in front of me throughout my whole career who I felt incompetent. I felt ashamed. I felt like I should know how to teach these students, and I didn't. So my whole career has really been, in dedication and in pursuit of how do I make this click for them in a way, in the correct way, and in a way that I can see success, and so they can succeed and be successful readers. And it wasn't until I stumbled across a book in my special ed training that said students in tier 3 like intervention who are like a grade or 2 at least behind grade level, they need intensive structured literacy instruction with through a method such as Orton Gillingham. And I was like, okay, I guess that's the next certification I'm going to pursue. And so I did. And then that's where it really all came together for me, because I had all this background in my language teaching. And then I brought it together with the science of reading, and it has changed my life, my students' life. I'm not saying it's like the answer, the end all be all, but it has made a huge difference. So I want to give a shout out to FDU. They're the only program in New Jersey who is accredited by MSLEC. MSLEC is a global organization, and it's their mission. They give accreditation to quality training courses in multisensory structured literacy education. So again, FDU is the only program in our state that is accredited by MSLEC. It's accredited by IDA. I can't say enough about them. I also applied for the FDU scholarship, which if you go that route, you could also just do the training through FDU. But if you go the scholarship route, you train at a dyslexia center in New Jersey, and you tutor twice a week for 2 hours a night. You tutor 2 students, and you are supervised, and you get feedback. And there's one of my practicum instructors, Dina Nahas, who's amazing, and I learned so much from her. So again, just wanted to give a shout out to FDU, because I would not know 99% of what I do if it weren't for that program. So let's get into it. What are foundational reading skills? What do our students need in order to be successful readers? So literacy would not be possible without the foundational reading skills. They are skills that are required as we move instruction from that oral language development into print. So language acquisition is natural. It's something that happens, but learning to read is not natural. So we have to explicitly teach that. Phonemic awareness is the foundation of all of the skills. It's understanding that spoken words are comprised of speech sounds. They can be segmented, manipulated, etc. Then building onto that is the alphabetic principle, knowing that those speech sounds are represented by letters. And then the phonics builds onto that. And that is being able to use the phoneme grapheme correspondences to read. When we say decoding, we mean that students are not just like reading words by sight, that they have to like sound them out. It's like that initial attempt to read a word. It's not automatic. And then encoding is spelling the word, producing the written symbol for the spoken sound. So, Congress asked a panel in 1997 to assemble and provide a report on what elements were instrumental, were critical to the acquisition of beginning reading skills. So in 2000, the National Reading Panel, using decades of research, they identified 5 areas that were critical for reading instruction. And they are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So that's what they identified as critical. And then at the bottom of the pillars, I added oral language development because for us, that's going to be a key factor that we want to weave through our lessons every day and develop that oral language because that is the foundation and that runs through all of these essential skills. So, the National Reading Panel did not address issues of second language learners. That was addressed through the Literacy Panel on Language Minority, Children, and Youth in 2006. So their major finding was that the components of reading that the National Reading Panel identified were also beneficial to our multilingual learners. However, they said that the approach needed adjustments. So adjustments meaning like instructional scaffolds to assist our students in becoming proficient readers. So these foundational reading skills, if you look at Scarborough's reading rope, they can be seen in the word recognition strand of this rope. So this rope has 2 strands. And the bottom strand, in my experience, is what I needed to learn how to explicitly teach this. So in my experience as a language teacher, I was taught the language comprehension strand really well. I know how to build background. I know how to build vocabulary. I know how to teach vocabulary. I feel really comfortable with teaching the structure of language as far as syntax goes, semantics. That I felt really confident in. It was how do I explicitly teach phonological awareness and decoding and fluency and automaticity, and how do I put this all together and make it meaningful for my students? You can see that the rope gets increasingly tightly woven because the more strategic and automatic these skills become, the more skilled the reader. So at first it's going to be like very awkward and slow and maybe laborious. And then the more skilled, the more automatic. All these essential components get woven tightly together. And that is representative of fluent, strategic, skilled reading. And then through this for us, I added the oral language development. That's going to be really key, again, for our students to build on because we don't want our kids just reading words and not understanding what they're saying. Okay, so moving on to the science.
Hold on. Someone's requested that you use the full screen for the slides because they're having trouble reading.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. You know what? I meant to do that and then I forgot. So thank you for reminding me. Okay. So what is the science of reading? So the definition of the science, 1 second, my Okay. The definition of the science of reading. I got this from the Reading League, which is an amazing organization with so many resources, and I'm going to share that at the end. So the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. The research has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world. So it is derived from thousands of studies in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. So I highlighted the parts that just really stuck out for me is that this is a vast body of research over 5 decades across the world, multiple languages. So even though the body of research is not as heavily focused on multilingual learners, there is still research done with them. Oops. Okay. So this is a really nice infographic to just kind of summarize what it is. Huge collection of research based on those 5 big ideas identified by the National Reading Panel. And it is ever evolving. So this year we are really focusing on phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency. Science of reading is not a program. It's not an intervention. It's not a product that you can buy. It is not only phonics, so that is a myth. And it is not complete. Like there's always more studying that needs to be done, always more research that needs to be done. So here we have the simple view of reading. And it says that word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So those are those 2 strands I was just showing you. We have the word recognition strand that I had no idea how to teach. And then we had the language comprehension strand. So if we multiply those, it equals the reading comprehension. So now I have a question for you. Why do you think it's a multiplication sign and not a addition sign? So if you can just take a second, think about that. If you're not sure, maybe just a question mark and throw it in the chat. All right, so really great answers. Some people are saying they're reciprocal. You can't comprehend what you can't read. They enhance each other. So yeah, so that's just it, right? Like if you have word recognition, but you don't have language comprehension, 1 times 0 is going to be 0, right? That's why we don't use the plus sign, because you would still have a 1 if it was 1 plus 0. So just the opposite, if you don't have word recognition, but you have like language comprehension, you're still not going to get reading comprehension because you have to decode it. You have to be able to actually lift the words off the page. So that is why it's a multiplication sign. You need both of them. Both are vital to creating successful readers. So here is our rope again. And again, we are really focusing this year on the word recognition. I just wanted to show you this newer model of reading because it brings in this green circle here, which is active self-regulation. And this is a really also important part of becoming a proficient reader. I'm sure you also have a lot of students who have difficulty focusing, self-regulating, those executive functioning skills. So other, you know, disabilities or whatever it may be, focus issues will also impact a child's ability to read and will make progress more slow. So that is also something to take into consideration. So I put up two little cartoons here that really show both strands of the rope, right? So we have on the left, you might be a teacher if you can read this. So once upon a time, we have our word recognition strand. And then in the picture on the right, we have a girl summarizing her book, meaning like making it summary. And we have that academic language, that language comprehension that we need to teach. No, I want a summary. I want you to summarize it. So we need both is the, you know, the point I'm trying to drive home here. So does the science of reading apply to our multilingual learners? Yes, it does. Just to give you some background on a little bit of the history of like how there has been disagreement, especially over the past few years as the science of reading has really amped up. So NJTESOL put out a white paper basically stating that the science of reading was kind of like leaving our kids behind. Schools are interpreting science of reading as phonics only, and our kids are not getting that oral language development they need. They're not getting the, you know, the meta-linguistic awareness that they really benefit from by bridging the two languages together. They were kind of saying that science of reading is just like one size fits all, and you know, our kids are being left out of these new policies that basically schools are interpreting them this way, and that's not helping our kids. And then reading researchers include Claude Goldenberg, Lillian Doran, Linda Diamond, Elsa Cardenas-Hagen, they responded to this, this white paper, basically saying that the science of reading is not only phonics. We disagree that it's one size fits all, like science of reading should be diagnostic, use diagnostic tools to give kids what they need. They agree that our kids need that vocabulary development and that oral language, and they agree like English language development is a huge part of becoming a successful reader and that our students need that. And science of reading, again, is not phonics only. So then most recently in 2023, NJTESOL and the Reading League, they came together and they put out a joint statement with organizations such as WIDA and TESOL signing it. And it basically highlights where the two fields are in agreement and how we are both coming together to support our students' success in reading, and how the science of reading is applicable for our students. And this is the how. How do we do this? So this is what changed my life, learning how the structured literacy method is implemented for our students. So this is the how. So structured literacy is an approach to reading instruction. It explicitly teaches systematic word identification and decoding strategies. It is informed by the science of reading. It is most effective when there is instruction in 6 elements, which are integrated appropriately to emphasize their relationship in our language system. All of these elements work together. And they are needed to read, write, listen, and speak. The phrase structured literacy was first coined by the International Dyslexia Association. So what is structured literacy? So the components of it are in the middle of the circle. They are teaching phonology, sound symbol relationships, syllable types, morphology, syntax, and semantics. And then around the circle are the terms systematic, cumulative, explicit, and diagnostic. So basically what that means is that they are diagnostic, meaning we look at each student's needs, right? So if I have a multilingual learner who has a vast vocabulary, let's just say oral vocabulary is great, but when they're reading, they're very slow and reading very laboriously, then I want to build their word level reading automaticity. So we're looking at each student individually and tailoring our lessons to their needs. It's explicit, so students are directly taught the concepts. They are not like discovering what it is that we're teaching. It's systematic, meaning we're starting from simple to more complex skills. And cumulative, meaning we are constantly spiraling back what we have been teaching prior. So getting in a little bit to dyslexia now, because multilingual learners can absolutely be dyslexic. Dyslexia is very common. About 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 people have dyslexia. So it's a specific learning disability. It is neurological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate or fluent word reading, or word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding abilities. The difficulties typically result from a deficit in their phonological component of language. It is often unexpected in relation to their other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. If you have met one person with dyslexia, then you have met one person with dyslexia. So just like our multilingual learners, there's no 2 multilingual learners that are the same. There are no 2 students with dyslexia who are the same. Every student, just like every one of us, are different, and we really have to look at each student's profile individually. So here are just some famous people, some celebrities who are dyslexic. And there's a podcast that I highly recommend. It is called the Amplify Science of Reading podcast, and they have a whole multilingual learner section from this summer where they talked about different issues in the field of multilingualism, bilingualism, biliteracy, and reading issues, dyslexia. This one episode was one of my favorites. It was with Francisco Lucero Gonzalez, diagnosing dyslexia and multilingual learners. And he talked about one of his students, how she wanted to read, right, so badly, but like each page was a battlefield. The words were playing tricks on her, dancing and jumbling. And if you've worked with a dyslexic student, you could almost feel this struggle that they go through. And then he said another layer to this challenge is that, you know, she's trying to read in English. Like mastering just one language in dyslexia with dyslexia is hard enough. Now imagine having to do this in a second language. Like it adds another layer, especially because Spanish is such a transparent language and English is not, right? So it is a struggle for our students, and just acknowledging that, like, yes, we get it and we're here to help you. You're going to get these slides. This is a great simulation that you can play on YouTube. And then PBS has a little exercise that you can also try and just feel what it feels like to be a multilingual learner. The PBS one is really great too. If you click on it, it has you like trying to read something. And I gave up right away. I was like,
this dyslexia simulation will give.
Okay. All right. So moving right along. What are the new NJELA standards for foundational reading skills? So the new standards are really grounded in the science of reading. If you take a look at the language domain strand for each grade level, I just put some screenshots here, but they are really specific to what it is our students should be learning at each grade level. So for example, in the kindergarten, you see at the top here, it says language domain. And then underneath, foundational skills, reading language. So this section is phonological awareness. And it's telling us exactly what it is that we are supposed to be teaching. So blending, segmenting, isolating, initial, final, medial sounds. The next part is phonics and word recognition. So for example, I love this. This is an addition. Part D here, recognize the parts of high frequency words that are irregular and the parts that are irregular. So if you've heard of heart words, when we teach a heart word, we're saying, okay, what part of this word follows the rules? So the word the, for example, the, okay, the TH, that follows the rules. So let's underline it. The in the, does that follow the rules? The E saying no. So we'll put a little heart underneath the E because that's the letter we have to remember by heart. You don't have to teach it exactly that way, but you could. And just pointing out to the kids that some of this word is following the rules and some is not. So I liked that addition. This is some of the writing as well has changed for under that language strand. So they give us some really nice specific information here. So like in writing sentences, supply the who is doing what. So subject, verb. So if you haven't had a chance to look into your ELA standards, I highly recommend going to the language domain because that is the new part, and then looking at the different components of that. This is the first grade for the language domain. They talk about in phonics and word recognition using decodables. So decodables are text that we use after we teach a phonics skill. Then we bring the child to a decodable, and in the decodable, they're practicing that skill. They're practicing reading that skill. So again, just wanted to point out that these standards are new and they are very helpful when trying to see what students should be learning. I do want to point out though, we get a lot of newcomers who maybe they come in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, whatever it is. We are going to need to teach those foundational skills that might be in like the K or 1 strand. And that's okay because they need that foundation before they can do the higher level stuff in the higher grades. So which part of the rope, of Scarborough's reading rope, do these new strands of the ELA standards represent? Is it the word recognition or the language comprehension? If you could throw that into the chat. And this is exciting because we haven't had guidance this specific. So yes, so this is the word recognition because they are covering the phonological awareness, decoding, sight word recognition. All right, so implications of these for our multilingual learners. The instruction is explicit and systematic, which is great. We want to teach this explicitly and systematically. When I was a student taking French, I learned French, I learned Italian. I lived in Italy when I was in the 4th grade. I got explicit language instruction. So when we learn a foreign language, we want that explicit instruction. Here are the letters, here are the sounds. This is what the sounds say. This is how you pronounce it, right? And our kids need that. So we need to teach this in an explicit and systematic way. And all students, monolingual students need this. 80% of monolingual students need explicit systematic instruction. You'll always have those kids who learn phonics, like, and they learn how to read, like, almost through osmosis, it seems like. But most of the kids need that explicit systematic instruction. We're going to connect to meaning. We're going to really highlight cognates when possible, developing academic vocabulary through this process, leveraging, building on the L1, giving them extra time to really practice reading and developing oral language through small group instruction. So I have here a little chart of what phonemes from Spanish to English transfer. I have this chart that I'm also sharing with you. It is adapted from the original, which was made by Judy Shapiro. But I changed all the pictures so they're mostly cognates. So when we're teaching the letters and practicing, it kind of lessens the cognitive load because they are cognates. Students can do a lot of different phonemic awareness activities with this chart that I will be presenting on in one of our subsequent PLCs as well. So then, like, really quickly looking into the WIDA standards, I'm not going to like do a deep dive into the WIDA standards today, but you can see like they go from really like global to more specific. So we have, for example, in the language arts standards, the key language use is narrate. And then that goes down to interpretive versus expressive goals. Then we get into our language functions. What are they doing? They're describing, they're orienting their audience. And then the grammar, the forms. So they are using prepositions or labeling nouns or whatever the case may be. And then you have the proficiency level, the PL descriptors of what a child can do at each level of oral language proficiency. So we really want to take these into account also when we're planning instruction. And they go, if you start at the bottom, they go from the word level, then to the sentence level, and then to the discourse. So that would be in reading, like the connected text level. So we want to build fluency first at the word level. We want them to be able to decode and read words fluently, and then go up to phrases and sentences, and then connected text. If you look at a lot of this language, you know, you can see that it is more focused on the language comprehension strand of Scarborough's rope. So understand how precise meanings are created through everyday cross-disciplinary technical language, through words, through sentences, pictures, chunks of language. So the focus is really on comprehension, right? So we need both of these. We need the standards from the ELA right? The New Jersey ELA standards to really target that word recognition that our kids need and the language comprehension from the WIDA standards. And we put them together and then we get reading comprehension. So that is what is really exciting. Okay, so New Jersey's new legislation, the two bills are right here. They are linked for you. Highlights of the bill is that it requires the Department of Education to establish a working group on student literacy. I am so excited to say that I am on the committee with Jenna Maneri. We are both representing NJTESOL and Multilingual Learners. So we actually met yesterday, which was awesome. And we are going to be working with a committee of exceptional educators from all different fields to ensure that our students are all successful readers. It mandates universal literacy screenings for K through 3 students, requires written notification to a parent or guardian of a student's results of the screener within 30 days of the close of the initial screening, and it requires PD for certain school district employees. So what are the implications for our multilingual learners? So for students attending bilingual programs, it is essential that we measure their reading skills in both languages and at least in the language of reading instruction in the early grades is necessary. So if our kids are learning in English and Spanish, we really need to assess both languages. We need that information for so many reasons. This is particularly important in multi-tiered systems of support where struggling students are screened and monitored to ensure they reach their grade level reading standards. So when we're looking, and I'm going to get into this in subsequent PLCs, but for now, what we're looking for is that we're not looking to put our kids in intervention right away, obviously, especially looking at their proficiency levels, taking that into consideration. We're getting a baseline. We want to see what they know. It's to inform our instruction. It's to evaluate our instruction. It's to evaluate a program we may be using. It's to compare multilingual learners across from each other. So we're not going to use the data to panic and say, oh, they all need intervention, but we are going to use it to inform our practice. I've linked a study, this was put out by the U.S. Department of Education. Studies show how important screenings are, even for our multilingual learners. We want to make sure that, again, we are screening in both languages whenever possible. So we are launching tonight a book study. This book is by Elsa Cardenas-Hagen. She is amazing. She is a reading specialist, bilingual speech pathologist. She has sat on the IDA. Honestly, her resume goes on and on. She has a speech pathology and consulting firm, I believe in Texas. And I actually just met her at the New Jersey International Dyslexia Association last week. I have my book right here. So this is the book that we are going to be reading this year. And then at the NJTESOL conference, I will have a session where we do like a Q&A and just like a discussion of the book. So I think that was a question in our survey, right, Kathy, if people would be interested in that?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
In the evaluation survey, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So this book has been so helpful to me. It gives so much information on the structure of the Spanish language and how to transfer that knowledge into English instruction. So we are launching that tonight. And I just linked some resources here for you on FDU. If you are interested in finding out more about that program, I highly recommend it. And then we have this awesome Padlet, which at your leisure, I put a bunch of resources in if you would like to dig deeper into any of these topics. I'm just gonna click on it right now to show you. So, oh, I forgot to say this. So English is not irregular. English is actually surprisingly regular. So, and then, so we have basically all the links that were in the presentation tonight, information on screening, MTSS for EL, for English learners is an awesome website. Some podcasts I highly recommend. There's the podcast I was talking about on Amplify. And New Jersey has a lot of great resources. The New Jersey Dyslexia Handbook was just updated for 2024. This is a little bit about the new bill that was passed. Here are the sound charts and sound pack I was talking about that you can use with your multilingual learners who speak Spanish. They connect through cognates, and in the sound pack, there are some instructions, further instructions on like mouth positions for the different sounds in the different languages. There is this UFly teacher toolbox, which is extremely helpful. It gives decodables for like the different skills that you might be teaching. TRL journal, the Reading League journal is amazing. I highly recommend subscribing to that. And then I wanted to point out this Reading Rockets modules. If you click here, they take you through each essential component of reading instruction and kind of, it's basically like an online course in how to teach reading, and it's extremely, extremely helpful. And then there's the link to the book that we are launching. All right, so our upcoming PLC series is going to feature different topics in different areas of reading instruction. So our next is going to be on December 11th, and I'm going to focus really in that one on what do you do with a child who comes to you, is past the age where they were supposed to learn to read, and they didn't learn to read in Spanish, right? They come to you not being literate or know very little in their L1. So what do we do with that student? Like typically a student who's second, third grade or older and cannot read in their L1, typically there's something going on, whether it's interrupted education, whether it's a reading difficulty, whether it's dyslexia. How do we help these students? So that session, this next section, is really going to focus on how do we teach a student with reading difficulties to read in Spanish, strategies for that. And then the session in February is going to be, okay, now we're going to bridge that to English, or I have a student from Russia or whatever country, and I need to teach them to read in English. And how do we teach those beginning foundational reading skills to a multilingual learner, whether they're in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, 12th grade? Then in February, the end of February, it will be how do we teach that phonemic awareness? We're going to dig really deep into phonemic awareness and activities and what would that look like for our MLs, the why, the what, and the how. And then in March, we're going to be doing a PLC on small group reading instruction and how to incorporate decodable texts and authentic texts and how to use them and when and why. And then, like I said, at NJTESOL-NJBE conference, we will be having our book study / PLC discussion. Kathy, do you want to take it away? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So this QR code is for, again, that Google Doc. We have 27 people registered in there. So if you still need to put your name in, I will give you a few moments to do so. Also, if you want to look at the next slide, I'm just going to do the NJTESOL announcements. So in addition to our PLC for professional development, we have several other things going on this year. If you have some interesting technique that you use for working with multilingual learners, if you have a great idea for a workshop, please complete a proposal for NJTESOL-NJBE. Our proposals, our workshops are from practicing educators, so please consider doing that. If you need assistance, members of the conference committee or myself can assist you in completing a proposal for this year. Our registration for the spring conference is already open. Next week, we'll have several members of our executive board at the NJEA conference. So stop by the booth to say hello, pick up some swag, ask some questions. Our very successful Parent Expo is scheduled for Saturday, January 25th, 2025. It runs from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. We have again, a raffle there for parents, and also we give parent certificates so that teachers can encourage parents to attend by giving their students extra credit if the parents show up with the certificate. And I did drop already in the link. The next PLC series will be on Wednesday, December 11th at 7:30 or 7 p.m. I am going to put in the chat right now. Oops, what happened? Let me see. Nothing. Okay, I thought I copied the PD certificate. So here is the link to complete the PD certificate. Please put the name. Please put the name that you would like on the PD certificate because it automatically comes to your email. Also recommend not using your school email because sometimes it is blocked. And here we can go to the last page. There you can find us on social media. There is the link to the PDF of the slides. And let me just make sure no one else signed up here. Okay, I got a couple more names in here, so let me just slip them into the selector. Okay, and we use a random name selector to pick our winners. Let's get these last names in here. All right. And so we have 27 people in the list, and we're going to pick 2 names. And here we go. So Jennifer Kehoe and Nelson Thermitas, if you could stay on at the end of the Zoom, and I'll get your addresses. Are actually in the chat. Can you say that you're here? Because we will be giving the books to people who are still here. Let me just see. Okay, Jen, I see you. Nelson, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and then you can email me your address, okay? Both of you, Jen and Nelson.
Yay, congratulations. Does anyone, Kathy, do we have a few minutes for Q&A?
Sure, yes, actually, I was gonna say, we do have time for some questions.
Okay, great. Do we want to do the PD cert evaluation now?
I already put it in. It's already in there.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, I already put that in.
Okay.
I could put it in again, though.
So if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question or write in the chat, I saw someone asking about pattern text. I'm just going to comment that the issue with pattern text for reading instruction is that typically the kid is just going to be like memorizing what the pattern is and not truly like decoding and reading the words using like their phonics knowledge. And I will get into this when we talk about texts, but there's something called orthographic mapping. And in the process of orthographic mapping, the brain is making like the brain is making a connection between pronunciation and the semantics and the orthography. So when they're just memorizing words, those connections don't happen in the brain because they're not actually like decoding them. Like the decoding process is what causes orthographic mapping to happen. So if they're just memorizing words, it's not going to help them become a skilled reader, if that makes sense. So, and I'll get into that more, but pattern texts are great for like oral language development and read alouds and things like that. If a child has dyslexia in their native language, yes, absolutely. So if they have dyslexia in Spanish or whatever their L1 is, it's going to present in whatever language that they're trying to read in. So they're going to need, you know, explicit, tailored instruction to where those gaps are for that child. Typically, they are phonological. So we want to build and fill gaps there and help them become more fluent and automatic in decoding.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I asked about the pattern text. So if you don't have a concern about dyslexia, the pattern, I mean, I've seen it in practice in a few districts, and it's like the repeated exposure to the language that the multilingual learners need.
Yeah.
Which
no, there's nothing wrong with like using it read alouds. I'm talking about like when you're trying to do like explicit reading instruction, it's not recommended to use a pattern text.
But is that based on multilingual learners? Or because I find with Decodable, it's so much language that they're lost. They might be able to get the skill, but they can't get like they don't know, like there's just too much language for them. So at the lower levels, the pattern text and gets them into the conventions of English. So I'm curious at the research on it because I've seen it in practice and it made sense to me. So I'm not quite sure, like, are they trying to say for multilingual learners?
It's for both. Yeah, it's definitely for both. So with decodable text, when you use a decodable text, the only features in that decodable text are supposed to be skills that the student has learned. You can take a decodable text. So a lot of the times I'll go on that UFly website that I shared, which is right here. And I'll start with that and then I'll modify it for my multilinguals because you're absolutely right. A lot of the times there's so much language in them, especially for my beginners, that I have to parse it down because they don't have all those sounds yet. So let's say, for example, Like I was doing short E the other day with my first graders. This, I think this was it. I don't know. But if you get a text, you know, from this UFly website, you can take sentences from it and just like parse it down. But in the decodable text part of the lesson, the only sounds that should be in the decodable text are sounds that they have already been taught, so they can decode the whole thing. And so they're not lost. That is how they are supposed to be used. So you're absolutely right. Like if there's like all this text and they have no idea how to decode it and what any of it means, then like, how is that helpful? So that's where we come in and make the adjustment of making simple sentences where we have taught everything in that text so that they can decode it and feel successful.
Do you have an example of that you can share? I would like to see that, how you
Yeah,
modified it.
I actually just made one for, I think it was, pretty sure it was E and AY, but I'll write that down and I'll add it to the Padlet so you can see. And I'll put the original in there from UFly and I'll put mine right with it.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're saying for multilingual learners, it's better to follow the systematic phonological process in the reading exposure?
So you want to follow a scope and sequence that is, yes, that is systematic, starting from easy to most complex.
Like a UFI scope and sequence.
Yeah. So in my next 2 sessions, I'm going to show you how I assess a child first and I find out exactly what sounds they know, what sounds I need to teach, and I build on exactly what they know and I add one thing at a time.
Ooh, if you could share that, because I got to start. I'm a new teacher, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that will be coming. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And we have 2 more questions in the chat, and then if we can just answer those,
okay.
and then we'll finish up. So
thank you very much.
All right. First year as a 3rd grade bilingual teacher, wondering if you could share effective ways to differentiate instruction that is age appropriate. And then the second question is, do you recommend teaching 1st grade bilingual students phonics in both languages at the same time?
Okay, so the first question, I'm assuming that you're a 3rd grade bilingual teacher and you need to differentiate based on different reading levels, meaning like some kids have a lot of knowledge of phonics and some kids do not. So if you can do any small group instruction, obviously that would be best to tailor your needs to the students. So like if you have a group of students, for example, and they all know their short vowels and they all know their L blends and they all know their R blends and they all know their digraphs, and now they need to learn some vowel teams like AY or EE, you're going to focus your instruction with them on that, whereas you might have a group of students who have total short vowel confusion, which is very common for our Spanish multilingual learners, our Spanish-speaking multilingual learners. So maybe you're going to pull some groups and explicitly teach the short vowel E, for example. So you're targeting your instruction to exactly what the students need. If you have to do whole class instruction, you're going to want to explicitly teach new skills that are new to everyone, and then try to like weave in, and I know this is easier said than done, you want to try to weave in those skills where the kids have gaps. So I know that's not the most helpful answer and like how to do that, but coming from a place of like, you want to know what your kids know, what sound symbol correspondences do they know, and what don't they know, and what do I need to teach, is kind of how I would differentiate instruction. And then, do you recommend teaching first grade bilingual students phonics? Yeah, so you're going to teach phonics in both languages at the same time. For sounds that transfer over, you don't need to like reteach them in both languages, if that makes sense. But like a sound like the English double L versus the Spanish double L, like they make different sounds. So you want to make sure that you're teaching the differences like explicitly. So you're not going to combine those, but the ones that transfer easily, that's no problem. Like you can teach, you don't have to reteach it in English after you taught it in Spanish. So like, you know, S or F or whatever it is.
Great. She says that makes sense. So
oh, good. Okay. Okay. Thank
so
you.
I would just like to, that is the end of our presentation today. If you do have questions, maybe go to that slide with your email on it again, Kathryn.
Oh, yeah.
And you can email Kathryn or you can email myself. I'm Kathleen Fernandez, the Executive Director of NJTESOL-NJBE. And we would like to thank you all for coming tonight. And I thought this was great. Thank you, Kathryn, for doing such an exceptional job on our first PLC about teaching reading to multilingual learners and the foundational skills for that. And I also learned quite a bit working with Kathryn on this presentation. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you all so much. And yes, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer and help in any way that I can.
Thank you.